Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Together, we explore topics of interest to in-house lawyers. We cover career, practice tips, leadership, the future of law, mental health, legal tech, and much, much more. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, like, follow, say hello. In short, engage. Finally, have fun. In-house legal practice is a serious business, but you don't have to take yourself seriously. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Well, hello. It's good to see everyone. And welcome back to another live episode of Visual IQ for Lawyers on the Notes to My Legal Self. This is our episode 5. We're about halfway through. We're continuing our special series celebrating the launch of our American Bar Association book, Visual Literacy for Lawyers. And in case you didn't know, we're really excited about it and very proud of it. So very excited to have this conversation. You can grab your copy of the book on the ABA web store or Amazon. It's available everywhere. And also download the full companion guide for various examples that comes with it on visualiqforlawyers.com. It's free. It is a really rich resource where we feature lots of work of professionals who've been doing this for decades. And this will inspire you, give you good examples, and you will find a lot of great information in that free guide. Today, we are diving into the ROI of modular contracting. And I am particularly thrilled about this conversation for so many reasons, including because I have a repeat guest, and it's always great to have a repeat guest because it's going to be amazing when somebody returns because they did amazingly well the first time, but also because for most commercial teams, continuous walls of text don't make enterprise contracts safer. They are just, frustrating. They frustrate the business leads and drag deal cycles. And that's where we as lawyers don't always get an amazing reputation. And real corporate legal transformation happens when we actually stop treating contracts as static compliance files and start engineering them as kind of more modular functional tools that are able to scale and grow with us, and we as organizations and we as humans grow all the time. So joining with me today, I'm my co-author, Tessa Manuello, and repeat guest, Stefania. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. I'm so excited to have yet another conversation with Tessa, my co-host, now for the 5th time, and Stefania, repeat guest. So welcome both. Tessa, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Olga. Hi, everyone. So excited for today's episode. Talk about Stefania, about modular contracting. I know you're all going to love it. It's pretty mind-blowing. For those who don't know me, I'm Tessa Manuello. I'm the founder and the CEO of Legal Creatives. We focus truly on human first, but also AI forward, legal design innovation and ops. And today Stefania is with us. She's a true pioneer in the field. So I just can't wait for this episode. Stefania, would you like to also introduce yourself, say a few words about your background, what you do? That would be amazing.
So, hi, ladies. Nice to be here again with you. It almost feels like coming home. We've been on so many different events together. And for those who don't know me, I'm Stefania Passera. I'm an information designer and the founder of Passera Design, which is a boutique contract design studio, multidisciplinary one, where we help our clients simplifying contracts and bringing design, plain language, and balance to their contracts. So we are helping them speeding up their commercial capabilities. We're working especially with business-to-business contracts, but after a while we work together, it happens often that our clients start throwing at us any sort of communication problem. So anything that is bureaucratic or complex, spanning from internal policies to technical operating procedures, seems to follow, because they try and test us with contracts, and they're quite amazed about what can be done. Although I always tell them, like, it's not rocket science, it's just good communication. But then it can easily follow.
Not rocket science, but just good communication.
So it is rocket science.
It is rocket science. but sometimes people prefer rocket science to good communication. That's
yeah, true. Maybe that's fair.
All right. Well, let's start with the friction then. We're not going to start with rocket science, y'all. We're definitely not going there. We're going to something much more friendly and exciting. Let's talk about friction. And funny, I love your the case study. It's amazing. Traditional enterprise contract drafting is built for worst case courtroom scenario, which hopefully is not reality for majority of folks. That's how I know that most people are still pretty happy, because they do not have to interact with the court system on a daily basis. And in your case study, Stefania, the head of sales actually championed this contract redesign because standard deals were getting severely bogged down. And heavy reliance on client paper was creating negotiation fatigue for sales teams, causing these dynamics with buyers right from the partnership, instead of sort of celebration. And then I'm sure it had effect on their bottom line and revenue and all kinds of other things that they may care about. So how does complex, unformatted legal text push buyers into their own paper? And how does moving the contract to sort of an early stage asset change that sale dynamic?
So in this project, first of all, I really love that the person who approached us was VP of sales. So with our team, we always look at contracts from a commercial, business, managerial perspective. Of course, the legal ingredient needs to be there. It needs to work legally. But no one signs contracts just to show off how good of a lawyer they are, or because it's fun. You're there to work with others. And I'll always remember that this VP of sales very candidly said, like, when our clients see our contract, 9 times on 10, they throw it in the bin. It ends up in the bin. And that's also a very natural reaction, because when you're confronted with something messy and unclear at that point, you may have as bad terms, but you prefer your own mess, because at least that's familiar. And that's why so many companies feel like they are getting hit back by their main buyer or client. It happens actually on both sides. When contracts are bad, then whoever has more power tends to impose their own terms. So back then, when we worked with EcoVadis, they were, I think they're much, much more successful now. They were still in a kind of growth phase. They weren't extremely large back then. It was kind of around COVID, just before COVID, or it was already the summer after COVID. And they really had the need to keep on growing. They were trying to penetrate the US market. If they wouldn't have managed to enter this market, they would have been in trouble. And they felt that their contract wasn't working for them, because every time they got, so 9 times on 10, as I said before, they were hit back by a master standard MSA from procurement. And especially when you're buying technology, so you're buying a SaaS solution like them. So for those who don't know, EcoVadis, it's a provides ESG scorecards. I think that now they have more services, but at least back then when we worked with them, they were quite focused on this specific, on this service. Now they have more. So it was a quite simple SaaS solution. And as I said before, whenever you're buying technology, either it's SaaS, something tangible, industrial services, or even telecom services, it would be better that the terms are really designed around what you are doing. So it's really around the specifics of that. Usually procurement MSA to purchase whatever service, it's really overinflated. So what happens? It happens that the negotiations are really slow because you have to start paring down all the things that don't apply to you, all the very defensive clauses against risk that don't apply to your simple solution. So, and especially trying to enter the US market, they had to have external counsel. So that also made their external fees balloon. So that really didn't happen, didn't really help. It also didn't help that this contract, I remember seeing it when they said, okay, it's horrible. They throw it in the bin. And then they show it to us. And it was on these 3 narrow columns in Arial narrow, very, very tiny, probably font size 0.7. So it really looked like a wall of text. It started, of course, from definitions, and then it went very quickly about what you cannot do. It felt pretty draconian, and I can empathize with the reaction from a procurement manager that, oh, no. Here are our terms. At least we know what we're reading. We're not going to engage with that.
Yeah, I love that.
3 columns, no less. I love that.
Yeah,
I like a lot.
Yeah, not even double column, which I already despise, but triple column. That was something. Yeah. And even they were making fun, like, well, this is what they give us, but yeah, we don't like. I mean, they didn't like it either. And of course, it was making life hard for them, so they liked it even less.
Yeah. What I like about what you sharing with us, Stefania, is how important it is to also understand the business, right? What is the product or the service? Who's the targeted customer? What is it you want out of this business, relationship or business expansion? So I really like that you brought all of that context into this conversation, Stefania. And now I'd like to go more, get under the hood of the mechanics of what you have built for EcoVadis. Because so you were given this 3-column, really tiny font document. And what you did is, from what I understand from the case study that is featured in the book, is that you didn't want to make that look pretty. As an information designer, sure, you can use all kinds of visual tools, but it's not about making it pretty. It's about making it more useful. And so you did a complete structural overhaul. So tell us more about restructuring the contract, and how did you manage to keep all the necessary legal stuff while at the same time making it more user-friendly? So what's the before, what's the after? And by the way, for those of you who want to see the before and the after, you can download the companion guide and you're going to see it. You're going to see for yourself the transformation. It's pretty impressive.
So that's really part of our approach. So yes, we concentrate on the business, but we also concentrate on the silly things, on the things that seem almost banal, but they're really, really important because, as my friend Helena Hapio likes to say, it's not contracts that make things happen, it is humans. So you have to understand the humans who are going to be confronted with your contract. You have to understand the process and the real user tasks, the real user actions. So the process made of those user actions, the user journey, not much the institutional process, but really what are people going to do with this and where the pain points are. So we were having this conversation to understand the pain points and what really happens and where really is the friction. Even before, almost before reading the contracts, we wanted to understand, okay, what happens? And that was really important because it gave us the idea of what to do with the structure to kind of flip the script. So when we talk with them, we understood like, well, we have this SaaS solution. It's actually not very risky because the only data that our clients provide us is a list of their suppliers that they want to onboard on the platform. We are not processing personal data. We are not processing trade secrets. And we have the problem that their lawyers instead are reviewing everything as we would do. And then I asked the question like, yeah, but do you think that the lawyer, the procurement lawyer, or whoever is reviewing this, when they get a proposal from you or they're doing this deal, do they even know what EcoVadis does? Like, well, maybe not. And that's fair. I mean, if you're a buyer, if you're working in a buying organizations, you may have to process many things. It's not like you're knowing every single product to detail. And that's where we had this light bulb moment. Like, okay, you are software very often it's bought with the sort of order forms. So why don't we have an order form at the front? So the first thing they see is what they're going to buy and how much it costs and who to contact in case of notices or for project management. So the beef of the deal. And why don't we put a small section where you say, in brief, what is it that we are really selling? What is it that we are doing? Because that provides a frame. And that's the very first thing they're going to say, they're going to see. And it's actually on the first page, this EcoVadis in brief. And once they see that, then we have our details. So the subscription terms, the SaaS terms, and then the service description of the software solutions you provide with their own service levels and so on. So we divide it in 3 functional blocks: the commercials, the legal, and the technical stuff. So what's in, what's out, and what you're promising at service level. And when we bet on this, we ended up winning that bet because this framing exercise actually worked. As you said, we didn't set out to go over the board with visuals or making the document pretty. That's actually the client themselves didn't want that. They said, okay, we want something very clear. Yeah, you can use icons, but don't go to town with visuals or funny things. So we concentrated mostly on the information architecture and the visual structure that goes with that. So clear headings, functional blocks, everything very clearly tagged. And then on the content side, we also reviewed their terms, and we found some clauses that perhaps weren't really market or they felt a bit draconian. So we had a discussion with them on how we could rebalance that. But even in this project, compared to many others we do, we went relatively light touch. Also in terms of plain language, we went relatively light touch compared to what we are doing, for example, now. I would say that our team is much more radical and our clients are much more ready than 6 years ago to accept such radical cutting down. But even with these, let's say, relatively conservative changes, we managed to create a structure that was really clear, that framed the thing like, okay, you are reviewing the SaaS solution and you're not giving us this sort of data. So what happened is that when the lawyers of the counterparty would review the subscription terms, they wouldn't be as hung up on, okay, but no, this liability cap should be higher or shouldn't be uncapped. They were much more, they actually started not negotiating as much these positions, which made the whole commercial position of EcoVadis much easier, much more tenable. And it also decreased negotiation time and friction. So that's basically what happened with, I would say, quite conservative changes. As I said, like it's one of the least radical things we've done in our lives, but it's so gratifying that the return on investment was through the roof, honestly.
Wow. Oh my, I can't wait to go into the business impact. But just before that, you mentioned a couple of things. The plain language element. I think this is something that is, I don't know if it's top of mind for lawyers, but I mean, there's been an ISO norm that was released for plain legal language last year. And I know that many lawyers want to implement it and find it difficult to find that balance between, how do you provide legal protection and how do you make it more user-friendly? And now you're telling me that in that EcoVadis case, you were pretty conservative, but now like clients are more inclined to be radical. I don't know if you can say just a few words about that, because I think this is really interesting.
Basically, I mean, for example, let's take some standard ways to approach plain language. A very standard rule of thumb way to assess the complexity of language is to use readability formulas, which of course are really limited because they're just based on the length of the sentences you have, the difficulty and length of some of the words you're using. So it gives you just an indication. It's not the the absolute truth of whether people actually understand what you're saying. But if you're running your document through the Flash-Kincaid readability formula and it comes out at 17, it's very difficult to argue that, no, this document is clear. There's definitely a lot of work to do. So anything above 14 would be postgraduate. It requires a postgraduate level of education to be understood. That's more or less how you read it. So on the Flash-Kincaid grade, the lower the better. This doesn't mean that you should make all your contract, especially business-to-business contract, at grade 8, so like the Gruffalo, but you can comfortably stay between a 10 and a 12. That's something that we've done over and over again. So a high school level that is much more suitable for the general business population. So most contracts read at a post or even post graduate level, and we should take it down a little bit. And so, as I said, like we shouldn't. I think that a lot of people think that, okay, plain language is gonna be childish and it's gonna be sloppy, but there's also research that shows that legal language is complex not much for the terminology it uses, but just because of the syntax being horrible, being too complex. And there are ways, even if you don't change that much the terminology, to have sentences that stay on track, that they don't balloon, and are much better structured. So I would say, like, try to make shorter sentences, remove the fluff, and use active verbs already sends you very much in the right direction. And as I said it before, I'm going to say it many times, it's not rocket science. If you have a law degree, this is probably the easiest thing for you. You're usually doing much more complex things. So don't be scared about this. Just be curious. And I mean, being a lawyer is ultimately, yes, there's a legal expertise, but it's a human-to-human service you're providing, and you must be skillful and you must care about communication. You trade with words, so I honestly don't understand why people feel so threatened by trying to be better communicators, because I think being better communicator means to be a better lawyer ultimately.
Yeah,
I love that. And maybe we should go into the business impact. What do you think, Olga?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's a good place to go. Let's talk about the bottom line. I mean, it's always, I'm thinking rocket science or money, Let's do money. Let's talk about money.
I always like money. Let's do money.
Let's talk money. Let's talk about bottom line, because the ROI here is, unbelievable. In your case study, the CEO actually said that this contract simplification initiative delivered the highest ROI on any contracting investment the company has ever made, which, not a reserved compliment. It's a huge compliment. So massive statement coming from, somebody who cares about this thing called money. So for the in-house counsel and legal ops leaders tuning in today who need to make this exact business case to their CFOs or C-suite or, leaders just generally, what specific metrics should they be tracking to provide this kind of commercial value? Or maybe turning that around, what is the biggest underlying problem you usually find contract simplification solves for them first, so that they're excited to do it again with, in different jobs or same job, with different properties.
Yeah, actually, these two things go together, because if you are not measuring what is actually important money-wise for your department, you're blind to it. And I have to say that, regrettably, with many clients, they don't have real visibility in how much negotiating each contract costs in average. They don't know how much time in staff hours it takes. They may not know until when they are really trying to do research how many people are involved. So recently we did this trying to assess this baseline. We call it the baseline, because if you want to calculate an ROI or even KPIs and keep on tracking that your contracts are performing, you have to at some point establish a baseline. And very often I ask in a very hopeful way from our clients, like, yeah, but what is your baseline in terms of, contract turnaround? How much does it cost? Even, hours multiplied by the blended rate of people that you throw at this contract. And most of them reply, we don't know, we don't measure that. So the first advice would be start measuring that. You need to know how long it takes. And then if you want to really zero in on where you're hurting, you have to have even more intelligence about contracts. You have to, for example, track what are your standard terms. So what's your starting position? And then in your template, and then in the actually executed contracts, how did you pivot? What are the fallbacks that you use? So we are very often they don't have data on this, so we're trying to do it manually with them at the start of documents, at the start of a document redesign project. So we figure out, like, okay, actually we are figuring out that clause such and such, in 99% of the cases, you end up agreeing on something else. You always use your fallback. So why wouldn't you use that as your starting point? And why wouldn't you lead with your best hand? Because I know that some lawyers, especially in the US, I heard many times, they prefer to have something in the back pocket to do a trade, to barter on certain things. But in our experience, to be honest, it actually decreased the continuous transactional cost that is associated with every single contract if you lead with your best hand. If you lead with your best hand, you actually, in some cases, even disarm your counterparty, because they see that your contract is kind of fair, it's common sense, it makes sense. So they're actually also, they are going to perceive you as someone who doesn't make a fuss, and they're also gonna accept maybe some things that create slight discomfort. Then if there's something that it's really important, of course, they're still gonna be negotiated. There's not gonna be 0% negotiation, but you can try to preemptively reduce this friction. And for example, in the EcoVadis case, but we've seen it in many other projects, our clients are able to regularly decrease the negotiation time by 50%. In another case, we have worked with another organization. They launched the new contract in October, and we looked at metrics somewhere in March. And in this period, they had signed 150 contracts, and 93% of them were signed with 0 deviations. With another client, this time on the procurement side, so not on the sales side, same thing. They, after the redesign, they were able to decrease the average negotiated clauses of their standard terms from around 50 to 27, so roughly half. And the heavily negotiated, so those most negotiated terms that every time take a ton of time, a ton of effort, from around 7 to 3. So, and in their words, they say, like, this is an enormous time and money saving in our organization, but also for our suppliers. It definitely helps the relationship too. So in EcoVadis case, I just made a guesstimate because I don't have their final numbers, but by seeing what they spent on us, and then I know that they work with some other consultant to retrain their salespeople with new scripts, maybe some internal cost, but based on the guesstimate I had and knowing the yearly benefit that they were managed to get just by anticipated cash flow, the project had a return on investment of 6,000%.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm off. Maybe it's only 1,000%. It's still a lot, I would say.
Yeah, I love when you have a margin that is large enough where you guesstimate.
Yeah, I think it's a comfortable margin.
Yes.
That's I would say. Like in just a few negotiations, you're gonna recoup anything you invest in this sort of projects.
Yeah.
I can
this
put
is
my
great.
hand on fire on that.
No, this is amazing. I mean, for sure, good communication can go a long way. And I love all the little golden nuggets you've been giving us and the audience, like if your contract gets the same red lines over and over, why don't you just use the green line?
Yeah, you get the same red lines over and over, and you always end up agreeing something else, then start from something else. It just makes sense. And I think that's also, for example, what TermScout is helping companies to do. It's trying to assess, okay, what is market? What is the starting point that makes sense? Why do you get hung up on this thing? If it costs you money, you're paying, I think you call it the transaction tax, Tessa.
Yes, the legal translation.
In academic speak, we call it transaction costs. But basically, you pay that tax every time you transact. Time by the money you pay, by the opportunities you lose. And if your contract is stupid, that tax is high.
Yeah, the tax is high, and it's delaying the bottom line. It's delaying the entire closing of the deal, so which means your revenue gets in much later, and that is also something to consider.
Yeah, if you're on the sales side, that's tragic. But even if you're buying and you end up spending, let's say, an extra $20 to $50K on anything you're buying, that's quite a high.
By the way, we don't call them stupid; we call them high friction.
High friction. You're much more polite.
It's okay if you choose to be high friction. Here's Stefania's
high friction is the outcome. Stupidity is the cause, I would say. Let me characterize it that way.
And I want to ask you something, because when people think about contract simplification and contract design and plain language, I think there is an assumption that it's very custom made, that you're going to invest a lot of effort, time, and resource and money to build something for, like one contract, one kind of deal. So I'd love to hear from you about the scalability, because I understand in this case study for EcoVadis, you didn't just stop at the US. I understand that later, this green contract, the new template with those 3 parts, like order form and commercial terms and legal terms, I understand it was used in other markets, right? With good results, or maybe amazing results. Can you tell us more about how that contract design is scalable in that specific example, like general?
Okay, I think there's like 2 points that can be made on this. Like first is that when you're doing this sort of contracts, you don't do it on live contracts, you do it at template level. So you work on template level. So one part of the things you do for the client is also to write very good drafting notes on how to use the templates. And when you're designing these templates, you're not thinking only of the end user, the reader, so the counterparty, but you have to make it functional and easy to use also for the internal people. Because if they cannot use it, or they use it wrong, or the template encourages them to be verbose, they're going to break it. The end result is not going to be good. So you always have these 2 audiences, and you have to design for both. So it needs to be a very usable template. And that's why it's better to keep things simple rather than going to town with design, but then you give this thing to non-designers and they're going to have problems using it. The other problem is, the other issue that we can point out that it's interesting is that when you're designing at template level, especially for global organizations, modularity is really your best friend. Modularity in the blocks, let's say, the larger parts that you have composing your contract, so the different sections or schedules, but then also within each of those, especially if you use CLM and you don't have to do it manually, it can be very easy to have a template that say, okay, we are selling this thing in Germany, or we are selling this thing in this other geography. So very easily you can swap in all the clauses that need to work for that jurisdiction. And if you're designing your contracts well and starting by widely accepted commercial principles, you can actually design templates that are mostly global. And then, okay, you're going to have to integrate and swap in the local terms, but they still work. You won't have to start from square one. So that's another design consideration when we're designing these contracts, like EcoVadis, but even much more complex ones that, in some geographies, you may have a lot of legal terms, local legal terms that may need to be slotted in. So you have to consider how that is going to happen. Another positive thing of having a simpler contract is that if you want not to operate only in English, but you want to translate it, if the master file is easier and simpler, it's going to reduce also the translation costs. And there's a higher likelihood that you're going to have better alignment in across the board, even if you translate your contract in French, German, or any other language. This is something that already Professor Joe Kimball was pointing out in his books and in his articles, that it really decreased that sort of cost, the translation cost.
Yeah, well, we are coming to the end. We can have this conversation for a very long time with multiple repeat guests and co-hosts. So, but I think it's time for us to wrap up this episode, and let's, as a goodbye, let's give our audience of in-house and legal teams, firm practitioners and contract managers, and because there's lots of people involved in contracts. It's something that really organizations unite around. Let's give them a quick lightning round and a quick value before we say goodbye. Tessa, I'll start with you, and then Stefania. Maybe one takeaway that you want to give from this conversation.
Well, the takeaway would be very practical. First things first, if you haven't downloaded the companion guide, do it. There's a lot of inspiration, including Stefania case study. And I think the more exposed you are to different ways of integrating contract design and legal design in your own practice, so the more exposure you have, the more you're going to be able to see the possibilities and what you can do with it. Because maybe you're gonna relate a lot to Stefania case study, or maybe not. Maybe you're going to relate more to another one. And so I think also it's about understanding for every kind of contract or every kind of template or policy or document that where you want to reduce friction, there's not just one single way to do it. There are many ways to do it when using this methodology, this contract design, legal design methodology. So I would say expose yourself to examples. And I think the easiest way right now is to get this companion guide. There are 20 plus case studies. And of course, inside the book, we go more into the frameworks. So, but I think for me, when I started in this field, this is what helped me understand, the possibilities. And this is how you unleash your creativity and be like, wow, I don't have to have this contract in black and white with 3 tiny columns in font 7, like it was the case for EcoVadis. You can have it in a different way, and in a way that is not just aesthetically pleasing, but actually works better for the business to negotiate faster. And I think this case study is just so fantastic, Stefania. So congratulations for your work and being a great inspiration for many practitioners around the world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Stefania, what is your takeaway from this conversation?
So let's perhaps, since I said many times, like it's not rocket science, perhaps people would like some quick tips, like, okay, but if we want to do it, where should we start? So I'll keep it very practical, perhaps. So you're going to also forgive me for getting very excited and woo on my monologues. So I would say perhaps for legal teams who want to transition away from the wall of text and the legalese, the first thing to do would be like look at the substance. As I said before, try to check positions that cause friction, and if you can lead with your best hand compatibly with your risk profile, try to do that. Try to see if you can pivot and bring your positions a bit more to the center, so they're more fair and acceptable and win-win. Then from the design perspective, I would say, because many lawyers say like, oh, I'm not creative, I cannot draw, how should I do it? Like, fine, you don't have to do anything purely visual. You can start by using your excellent logic and think of structure. Also the information architecture part of it, it's really about how you organize the content. So I would suggest try to chunk down the content. Try to keep as much as possible one idea per clause or one idea per subclause, one idea per bullet point. Add as many headings and subheadings as possible and make them meaningful, because that's the way in which people, and increasingly AI too, scan your text to make sense out of it, and bring the business stuff at the front. So describe as much as possible the business and the commercial and the operational stuff as possible. In the front as much as possible, and then you move into the more legal matters. So first you talk about the thing, and then how we are going to agree on the rules to do the thing together. Then look out for fluff. So try to find extra language that you can actually live without. You can easily cut anything between 10 to 40% in your contracts if you're really committing to that, and if you commit to remove duplications. If you really take the time to read your contracts, you're going to notice that you're saying the same things, same but different, in more than one way, because those are your safety blankets, and you have to let go of those safety blankets. Say it once, say it clear. And then probably from plain language, the best thing you can do is active verbs, simple grammar. So focus on these two things. Don't think of everything you can do in plain language, but start from those two things.
I love. Let go of your safety blankets.
Yeah.
Do that. If you do nothing else, definitely do that. I love.
Now, don't let go of the real protections, but the psychological safety blankets, right? So we're talking about two different things, like real risk management and perceived risk management.
Yes.
Let go of the perceived, feel good, psychological risk management.
Let go of your blankets, okay? Just let go of your safety blankets. Just do it. Just do it once. Just do it. Just say no. I love it. Stefania and Tessa, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. It's always great to have you both back and share your insights and wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. And thank you, audience, for joining us for this conversation, as for this visual literacy for lawyers conversation that we now had a few times. You proved that legal rigor and modular architecture and commercial agility in this conversation and in previous one we had can and should go hand in hand. And I really love this conversation for that reasons. And again, thank you, viewers, for joining and tuning in. If you want to view the visual transformation, modular layouts, and before and after pages for Stefania's work that she discussed, where she gives you literally right next to each other before and after, go to visual IQforlawyers.com to order your copy of the book, ABA book, and download the case study with more than 20 of them. Many of them feature before and after, and you can be inspired and go forward and read the book for frameworks and to check out the case studies. And until next time, I will see you and have a conversation on Notes to My Legal Self. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They are an act of courage. Remember, the future of law is bright. Enjoy your in-house practice. It's an adventure of a lifetime. See you soon.